Welcome everyone to episode 366 of Nintendo Voice Chat, our weekly show for everything Nintendo. We've got a lot of wonderful topics today, but first of all, episode 366, Order 366. Today's topics, we're going to give you some impressions from Comic-Con. A bunch of people went to Comic-Con, played a lot of Nintendo games there, so that's very nice. We're going to talk a little bit about Nintendo Online, the latest games that we're playing, but also who should make Metroid Prime, because we don't know the developer and we really want to know.
Yeah.
And so today with me on the show, we've got Brian, Mother Brain Altano.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've got handsome Zach Ryan.
What?
And we have Andrew the Widow Goldfarb.
Wow.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
And I'm Per Schneider.
Mother Brain, huh? All
You guys watch Fargo?
Mother Brain.
What's that?
Mother Brian. You watch Fargo?
Yes.
There was a Widow Goldfarb. So,
Yeah, okay.
and they
That's
talked
right.
about the Goldfarb way. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm Per Schneider, your host for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed last week. We had Sam Claiborne on and Casey. I listened to the show. I didn't watch it yet, but I heard it was really cool. You guys showed a lot of images of arcade machines.
That's true.
Some cool stuff on
You'll be
there.
amazed to learn that Sam looks exactly like he does on NVC as he does every day in the office.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very
And he
cool.
looks exactly like the kind of dude that knows a lot about arcade games.
True.
And like that G.I. Joe cartoon from a few years back.
I like it. So let's get right into the latest news. There actually has been a lot on the news front. First of all, sales numbers have come in for the last quarter. And unsurprisingly, it's looking pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's looking really good.
Yeah.
In the words of my friend Brian Altano, Hachi Mama. Some real big sales numbers there.
So let's get right into it. The lifetime sales for the Nintendo Switch worldwide are just under 5 million. So 4.7 million.
Yes.
It sold 1.97 million in the last quarter.
Correct.
To which I have to ask, where were they?
Right.
Who bought those?
Who saw 2 million Switches on
Right.
store shelves? That's amazing.
I wonder how much of that must have just been international, because at least anecdotally in the U.S., like you cannot find them. Like,
I mean, anecdotally in Japan, it's impossible to find them. I've read like stories of game devs working on Switch games who can't go buy the Switch. You know, there's lines like crazy there. The secondhand market and scalping has been a massive problem. These numbers are huge. I wonder what they would look like with a steady supply of systems out
that's
there.
exactly it. So like this is PS4 within its first 3 months. It came out in November, and as of about February was at like 5-something million. And so this is like about on par with that. That was only in the US because PS4 launched later in Japan. So
Right.
it's like this is probably about the same, but people just can't get them.
Yeah.
So to compare apples to apples, the first quarter for the Wii saw 3.19 million sales for the Wii, and then the first quarter for Wii U, just under that at 3 million.
Yeah, and the Wii U actually had a not a terrible start out of the gates,
Yeah.
but it was available everywhere.
True.
I remember after it came out, we said, "Man, you go to Target, the shelves were stocked with Wii U's. That's not a good sign." Whereas with the Switch, they're gone. Ironically, this week actually, I've seen a whole bunch of Switches go on sale. You know, the GameStop conglomerate with ThinkGeek, they're selling bundles. So, you know, obviously retailers don't get so many of them, so they want to make sure that you buy a lot of stuff. So on GameStop, about like $350, $359, you get the system with the game. So it's a good deal. It's not like they're scalping.
Yeah. ThinkGeek was doing the same for the NES
NES Classic as
actually.
well, yeah.
But ThinkGeek adds more ThinkGeekish items, like you have to buy a Zelda Monopoly with it
Yeah, or
and all
like
that
a giant
stuff.
Sonic statue.
Or a Mega
something.
Man helmet. Yeah, that NES
Yeah.
Classic deal was not a good deal, but it was at least a way to get it.
Yeah, they had like a Wario bed.
Yeah. So if you're still in the market for a Switch and you can't find one, or an NES Classic, go look at GameStop and ThinkGeek, or just follow IGN Deals on Twitter.
Yeah.
You know, our Dealmeister tweets out whenever Switches are in stock, if they are in stock longer than 5 minutes.
Yeah, but
Which they usually aren't.
This is fantastic. I think it speaks well to the momentum happening with the system, and I think that if you look at the Wii U numbers, that was pretty much the dedicated. Everyone bought. Did everyone here buy one of those like right out the gate?
Yep.
Yeah.
I actually bought mine about a year down the road. I got a refurbished unit.
Got it. Yeah. So I mean, I think like most of the people who bought those out the jump were the hardcore Nintendo fans, right?
Yep.
They were like they wanted it no matter what. And once that number petered off, you're left with not a lot of people. Yep. And this is a different story. I think this is reaching lapsed gamers, casuals, people who hardcore gamers who buy every console. You know, people who have PS4, Xbox.
You go. Sorry.
Oh, well, I was going to say there's also stuff to play on it.
Yeah.
I mean, like I think one of the reasons that this paints a little bit of a different picture than Wii U's early success, is that like looking at MPD this month, like all in a row, you had ARMS, you had Zelda, you had Mario Kart. There's been a major release pretty much once per month, and that continues straight through because we're coming up, obviously Splatoon's out, we're coming up on Rabbids, we're coming up on FIFA, we're coming up on so many things that are in Mario and Rabbids, and I said that. But yeah, like there will be a lot of good stuff leading up to Galaxy.
There's another interesting factoid here. So first of all, Zelda is at 3.5 million sold overall, 1.16 million just in the quarter. But the big surprise to me is ARMS, 1.18 million. So it's different from the Switch, where people went crazy over Wii Sports and then said, "Nah, I'm good. Right, keep playing it." And then they might have gone out for like Carnival games, some other casual games, or some of the collections.
This is by far and away the biggest success of the Switch so far, because this is a new IP, B has no recognizable characters in it from any Nintendo franchises, effectively, and C, like a motion controlled fighting game. Like, it's just odd. It's an odd choice. It's got this weird new art style where everybody's got like funny spring limbs. Like, it doesn't. It's called ARMS, which is like admittedly a stupid name for anything. I love it. We've all come around to it. But that it crossed 1 million in just over a month. You know, it's great, phenomenal.
And 1-2 Switch also over 1 million already sold. So Nintendo's doing well, and it's reflected in their financials. They had an operating profit last quarter of $145 million. They made gross income. They made $578 million. So a healthy business from, if you remember, last year we were talking about operating losses all around. So
and I say this a lot, but like, every time we report on sales or we talk about sales on a podcast or something like that, there's a select group of people who are kind of like, well, I don't care, I can't play sales numbers. And it's like what they need to understand, and just to reiterate, strong sales of first and third party, which hopefully we'll get to see eventually, software on a system like this means that people want to support it. They want to put their games on it. It means we'll start seeing stuff get ported to it. I think that you're going to begin to see a mad dash of third parties going, let's take some stuff and bring it over and experiment. And it just means more games. A successful console means more games. The Wii U wasn't one, so it didn't get a lot. 13 million Wii U's sold worldwide. And we're already, I think we'll cross that. What, in the next year?
Well, with any public company, right? If you're not keeping up on finances, well, everybody played Animal Crossing and the turnips game, right? Yeah. But if obviously when Nintendo goes back to the street and reports really positive sales numbers, investors become interested. More people buy stock. The stock trades higher. That means more money in Nintendo's pockets to actually invest in stuff like games.
Means more games.
And these are the things on PowerPoint presentations at every third party right now, hopefully.
So one down note: 3DS sales are down year over year by 31%. So the line is definitely declining.
I think that's to be expected. We're seeing fewer and fewer 3DS games month over month. And honestly, like with a system that's as portable as the Switch, I've picked up my 3DS twice since the Switch launched. And that was to jump back into Pokemon for a little while and to play Pikmin last week. And I mean, everything else, the majority of my time has been spent playing my Switch.
Yeah, when I travel like for the weekend or something and I want to grab a handheld to go, it's my Switch.
Exactly. And it's also like I would pick up my 3DS literally daily just to play Badge Arcade, but now it's gone. And so it's like even like the little tiny incentives to just play for a minute a day aren't there.
Yeah. That said, I mean, when Metroid comes out, I'm all over it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. Come September, I'm sure that'll be almost console exclusive, just me playing that game. So.
And finally, just to wrap up the overall sales, Nintendo's smartphone efforts actually drew $88.5 million in that last quarter, which is really positive. Obviously, you don't know how much they spent on the effort, but I gotta think, it's pretty successful.
Including Pokemon Go, or is that just Fire Emblem and Mario, meaning mostly Fire Emblem?
I'm sure it includes everything that they actually realized under the Nintendo business line.
Yeah. Say 80.5 or
80.5. That's not net profit. That's how much money came in. Yeah.
And that's before Animal Crossing too.
And we don't want to inundate you guys with numbers, but one more thing: Splatoon obviously came out, and we're all playing it.
I thought the name of this show was Numbers Voice Chat.
That's right. Well, it was Splatoon Voice Chat for the last 2 weeks, so we're not going to talk a lot about Splatoon today. But it came out in Japan, and it sold 671,000 copies in 1 week, according to a report in Famitsu magazine. That has already in 1 week passed the lifetime sales of Mario Kart, which sold 534,000 so far.
In just Japan, right?
In just Japan. So, if you guys had any doubts that Splatoon is humongous for Japan, Nintendo is the first company to really crack first-person shooters.
That's crazy.
In that market, or third-person.
Third-person, yeah.
That's
and also
insane.
don't forget that with all this financial reporting like this stuff, so their quarter ended on June 30th, so you're not even seeing numbers for the past several weeks. So this is also stuff that like it's probably all of these numbers are probably at least a little bit better than we're even seeing here.
Right. And
in this case, this was 1 week sales, but yeah, overall.
So you're absolutely looking at another million seller first party franchise right there on the.
Splatoon is week 1 million seller.
Yeah,
easily.
No
If
question.
not more so. I mean, Splatoon is so much bigger in Japan than it is here.
Yeah. So something that also could have sold really well was the Super NES Classic.
I don't even want to
Did
talk
you guys
about
all pre-order one on Walmart?
God, yes.
Yeah.
No, because
So-
I saw this coming.
What?
Let me tell you.
Did you pre-order it?
Let me tell you how this went down.
A little roller
There I
coaster.
was spending my days in anxiety thinking about how am I going to get a Super Nintendo Classic.
Yep.
And I was at Comic-Con when our friend Wario64 on Twitter tweeted out that pre-orders were available on Super Nintendo or for the Super NES Classic, and I opened up my phone. I sent a group message to you guys, and I was like, pre-orders are up, go now. Was already logged into Walmart.com, got mine, and just felt so supremely confident about it. I was like, that was easy. That was so much easier than the months that I spent tracking down an NES Classic.
Didn't like little squiggly lines appear over your head, like little
Spidey sense
thing?
No, I
'Cause
was.
They did appear.
I
over
was
my
totally
head.
duped. Like part of me, in the same way that I pre-ordered my Switch and had zero complications with that. I was like, I'm okay. So I'm 2 out of 3 on
You just thought you were
pre-orders,
golden boy.
and that ain't bad.
Yeah.
I'm
And
invincible.
It's not
crazy 'cause this
invincible because like I
happened-
couldn't find the NES Classic. Nobody could.
And this
But-
happened with Target with NES Classic. The exact same thing happened.
Yeah.
They took orders when they weren't supposed to because they didn't have an allocation from Nintendo, and then they all got canceled.
So
Well,
you got
what's-
the email.
So what's even worse is that the next day at Comic-Con, one of our coworkers, Brian Malkowitz, he was telling me, "Hey, that Walmart pre-order was a mistake, and emails are rolling out that pre-orders are getting canceled." And in my mind, still optimistically, I was like, I ordered mine so fast, I'm sure mine is fine. And I didn't get an email for almost a full week.
Same.
And then yesterday, the email came through and was like, sorry, we made a mistake. Pre-orders are canceled. We didn't
man.
charge your card yet. And then I openly wept.
Yeah, there were a lot of people who said, "Oh, mine hasn't gotten canceled. I actually got an order update that says your order has been updated. Now has
Yeah,
new release
me
date."
too,
People
yeah.
are like, "Well, that's a good sign."
Yeah.
If you're still out there and you think that you're not. Walmart
not.
has canceled all orders, so unfortunately you'll have to reapply once the pre-order.
So I actually got this crappy like 1-2 punch where they sent me an email being like it's canceled, and they sent me another email being like, good news, your pre-order has been updated by 1 day.
and it's free.
And I was like, oh, cool. So it's not canceled. It's still happening and I'm getting it earlier. And then they sent another one that was just like, nah, just kidding. We hate you. We're Walmart. That's
So
fine.
what does this mean? Do you think that we will have an opportunity to pre-order at all?
Yes, I think pre-orders will go up. We don't know what you don't think so?
No?
I think it'll be the same as last time. I think that
This is an audio podcast, so if you're shaking your head over there, you got to say the words.
We don't know if I was shaking her head.
I really don't think so. I think that same as NES Classic, it seems to be that their strategy is they want these in stores. I think you'll get the little.
That was not their strategy.
No,
the strategy
I mean,
was that they don't want to sell it. and they
Very
hate
few
you.
people could, but their strategy was get it in the store. If you can't, too bad.
Our
Like,
speculation from the jump of that thing was like, oh, this is the kind of thing you'll be able to walk into a CVS. It'll be on the end
on the end cap.
Yep.
And you
Yeah.
just be like, oh, a candy bar. I got my O. Henry and my People magazine. And grab an NES Classic. It's so easy.
You're a
Instead,
weird
we're
dude.
we're slashing each other's throats trying to get Amazon now to deliver it.
I think my concern here is that there's a
miss
lot
our
of
Henrys.
there's a lot of conversation around the demographic for this little system, right? So on the day that it was announced, when the games came down, Andrew and I distinctly remember talking about like, well, the NES Classic was probably a lot harder to find because, like our parents' demographic, like it appeals to so many more gamers that aren't typical, like you're like run of the mill Alec gamers, right? And who haven't purchased these on other systems a million times and things like that. But the more I think about it, the more I look at that lineup on the SNES Classic, the more it's like, ooh, this is going to be in such high demand. It's going to be so hard to find.
I mean, I'm a little bit more hopeful because Nintendo did say we're thinking about ways to deliver more stock, right? So they
They're
already
thinking about it.
acknowledged that the first one was a disaster, but you're also seeing the stock for the NES Classic now returning for, even though it's not being made anymore on ThinkGeek and, like granted as bundles,
Yeah.
but they said they had a lot in stock. And
They're still not sold out.
I do, and they're still there. So I do think there's hope for the second wave when the excitement has died down a little bit, and in some of those niche stores, like Amazon is just this big hub where all the scalpers go too. A scalper does not want to buy a bundle that has a freaking plush mushroom in it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Plush
they'll lose,
as it's called.
they'll lose so much
Plushroom?
money. I mean, I don't know if you remember the day we got a heads up that Amazon pre-orders were coming, and I think they actually finally said it like on Twitter, and the whole office was ready to go, and it literally crashed at Amazon.
That was all of Amazon. That was one of the craziest days that I've ever been in this office because it was like somebody doing the wave. I remember Ryan McCaffrey just stood up and shouted, "Pre-orders are up on Amazon!" And then just this frantic clicking of mice and like typing furiously and like.
And we're all terrified too because we're getting them shipped to the same address. And we're like, they're gonna think it's like some sort of like scalpers hub.
Oh yeah. Sorry, we canceled all your.
We're all gonna end up.
Only
in
Zach
Think
gets his.
We're all gonna have Think Geek.
I mean, I really hope I'm wrong. I really hope they're pre-orders.
I hope you're wrong too.
Yeah, me too.
Guys, let's move on and come back when we fail at the next batch of pre-orders, and then lament. Sorry,
10% of the show historically has always been us collectively complaining about not being able to purchase something. Whether it be an Amiibo, a Switch, a 3DS.
Brian, I tried to download the Rayman Legends Definitive Edition demo from the EU eShop. I was unsuccessful.
How come?
Yeah, there was a demo for Rayman.
How long was it there for?
There's Rayman. Do you got it?
I got
That's
it.
out of the bag.
Yeah,
So that was a mistake too.
So Rayman is coming to the Switch on September 12th.
Correct.
Or the opposite of those dates if you're in Europe. That always screws me up. It was like coming
December
12/9. I was like, really? That's kind of late.
So we go small to big. So day, month, year.
They do everything right over there. We've just been doing it wrong for so long that it feels right. So they put the demo up for Rayman Legends on the European shop, which I have an account for. Super easy. I've said this before. I have an account for America, US, Japan, and EU, right? And so hopping over to each of those accounts, downloading demos or games, whatever, super easy to do. Jumped on there, grabbed the demo. It's the demo that launched on Wii U originally, I believe. There used to be a demo for that game.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just like, it's like 9 levels or something, or 7 levels. There's like a good amount of stuff in there. And characters you can swap in and out of. If you've never played Rayman Legends, it's a sequel to Rayman Origins, one of the most beautiful platforming games ever made. It's got this like really Michael Ansel hand-paintedly style co-op action platforming game. They brought in a bunch of stuff from Origins into it. Goldie, you've like almost 100% of this game, right?
Twice, yeah. I 100%ed it on Wii U, and then I'm like 4 trophies away on Vita. So they added, there's a lot of like little unlockable things. So as you go, you can collect like, there are these music levels, and then there are 8-bit versions, and like there are bonus levels, and each of the bonus levels is basically an Origins level, but with maybe a new twist depending on which character you're using.
So they put this demo up on the shop. I grabbed it, I played it. I was like, cool, this totally checks out. This is gonna be a fun game. It leans into more the PlayStation 4 style of playing, where if you remember the Legends version on Wii U had Murphy, which was this like little character who flew around and forced you to do like kind of touchscreen stuff, like slash ropes and move blocks around. On the PS4 version, and I believe some other versions, you could just hit the A button and it would do that for you. So that's the version here. I think there'll be touchscreen stuff eventually. Either way, the demo's gone. They pulled it. So come over and play it if you want. I have it. Or wait, or just play it on Wii U because it's there already. But
it's such
they said
a great
it's coming
game.
back. It's a really cool game. So the weird thing about this is a weird little sort of like anecdote is that this is not the first time Ubisoft has put a Rayman demo on a Nintendo platform and then yanked it never to be seen again. Tell us about the 3DS version, Goldfarb.
Yeah, the 3D, I forget if it's Origins or Legends, but it's the same thing. They put the demo up and then yanked it. But the worst thing on 3DS is that it had limited plays.
Yeah.
So like I have that demo, but it's like 24 plays remaining. And I'm like, when I play it 20 times, that's it. Like that's the end. Yeah.
The demo just disappears after?
No, it stays there, but it just says you can't play it.
Yeah.
Like you'll have the
stupid.
icon for it forever.
That's weird. Do you think it was a music licensing issue? Because Rayman has the crazy like tune levels in it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's like Brown Betty and a whole bunch of other songs in there. So like I don't.
Brown Betty, huh? Michael Ansel and Brown Betty.
Yeah. Do you remember that movie Batman Returns starring Michael Pfeiffer as Catwoman?
But we let the Michelle Ancel slide. But
Ultimately,
I call him Michael. All right, we're boys.
that it's
get American.
Regardless of whether or not there's a demo available, it's really exciting that Rayman is coming to Switch.
Yeah.
I think that's it's such a gorgeous, like incredibly engrossing platformer. And honestly, the Switch is sort of missing that right now. Like
I think $40 is too steep for it.
I didn't know that was the case. That's not good.
Well, and that was the whole thing. Like the night of so in January, Ubisoft announced 3 games all at once. It was Just Dance, it was this, and it was Steep. And at the time, I really rolled my eyes at that as their offering.
Can you show us?
Switch.
Okay.
Like that.
If you're listening at home.
But no, like at that time, I was like, well, that doesn't seem great. Now that I'm actually thinking about Rayman Legends, I'm like, yeah, I will 100% replay that, even for $40.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's so, like playing it on Vita was perfect. It's such a good portable game.
It looks great on Switch. It's really beautiful.
I was
Especially on
planning
this
to
little
not
screen.
rebuy it because I already own it multiple times, but that portable factor is going to get
Guess what? You will.
Yeah,
Hey,
exactly.
you know what else
Congrats.
I'm going to buy?
What?
Is the Metroid amiibos.
I imagine you pre-ordered like 3 of those.
Yeah.
I
Shocker.
pre-ordered the amiibo, I think, at Walmart. I'm getting a little worried. Anyway, so we
Once
learned,
bit and twice shy, pair.
we learned what they actually do. You can look that up online, but basically, the new Samus one will unlock an energy reserve tank, the classic Samus one, a missile reserve tank. There was the Metroid, the squishy Metroid, reveals the location of any Metroid on your map.
Which will be
So, like, a
supremely
viewable map.
useful in Samus Returns.
Kind of a cool feature, right? The only thing is that the Zero Suit, the Zero Suit has an energy reserve tank and music in the gallery, so it unlocks all sorts of stuff. But the hard mode is locked behind amiibo.
Yeah, that's bad.
stupid.
That's
Yeah.
a bad.
Do you
bad
think?
call.
I mean, we don't know yet if that means it's exclusively locked behind an amiibo, or if you can beat the game and then unlock.
Behind which amiibo?
Which one was it again?
I'm not sure. It's
Metroid.
one of the 3. Yeah.
I think we deleted our own notes.
I'm not sure. Can you buy them individually anyway? I thought they were only
They're
sold.
a pack.
Yeah, I thought they were.
Yeah,
I
you might be
pre-ordered
right.
the 3-pack of them.
Yeah, you might be right. So
Sorry, it was the Metroid. The Metroid has a new difficulty mode.
this is the second
squishy
time.
Metroid.
This is the second time that Nintendo sort of bungled the hard mode in a major release.
Again, we don't know. It might be.
Yeah.
So let's see. But
I mean,
I'm
they
sure
s-
they'll upset some people.
They sold you Master
upset right
Mode
now.
through Breath of the Wild, right?
I'm upset right now.
You're upset? You should
Nah,
be
I'm
upset.
not that mad about
he
it.
is.
I'm not that mad about it. I mean, I feel like Samus Returns, well, I guess initially Return of Samus was a hard enough game to begin with.
Yep.
So I don't necessarily know that I need hard mode, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's that weird thing where I think costumes are the perfect mechanism for amiibo. I think like the way they work in Zelda, I'm actually really happy with. I was actually just scanning your Majora's Mask one earlier to try and get the deity armor. But I think like at that point, like when you're hiding hard mode, that's a gameplay feature. And that's a thing that like feels a little like, I guess you could think of it in a positive way, which is that you're buying the DLC or you're buying hard mode, but you get
you're
free
getting
action
something
figures.
with it.
Yeah. Like I think that's what they mean to do.
Again, we don't know that this is necessarily 100% the case, so everybody out there, please take it with a grain of salt. But if it is the case, it's sort of a bummer.
Yeah, I think it sucks, straight up. Like, I mean, whether or not this game's hard or easy, I think giving you the option on day one is something they shouldn't lock behind a physical purchase or a digital purchase. Like, I don't think that DLC should be tied to something like a difficulty level. Like, that's something it's a very basic thing that should be there on day one. You know, Master Mode was one thing because it came with all this other stuff, and there was like...
It comes later too. You could see that they started working on it. Maybe it wasn't done for the final game. There's that little distinction, right? It always feels icky when something is locked away.
Yeah.
To be unlocked by some key that you just haven't been given.
Well, I imagine
already on the
this is
disc,
going to work on day one, right?
for it.
I mean, day one, you're walled out
Which is
of...
ironic when you're talking about a Metroid game. The idea that it's hidden behind a key, a door that you can't open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Key you have to buy.
day one, not being able to just switch over to hard mode without buying something is stupid.
Really? See, I just want to play the game on normal.
I don't know, you're talking about Brian Hard Mode Altano over here.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, like thousands of people listen to this show, right? And I'm speaking on behalf of the ones that like probably
The super
aren't,
players.
that don't buy every Joy-Con released and don't buy every amiibo and don't buy every Switch case that they make.
There are such people.
Yeah, there's some people just buy a game and they
Check
don't,
it out.
you know.
Did you see my new Splatoon Switch case?
Yeah,
I
it looks
liked
like
it so much
Neapolitan
that I
ice cream.
just sold. I literally bought this 2 days ago, sold it to someone already so I could buy that one
For
instead.
those of you listening at home, Per Schneider is holding up his Switch case and it's got multiple colors on it, such as green and pink.
Yeah, and I ordered the
Be
matching Joy-Con with it.
Welcome back to another episode of What We're Buying.
All right, anyway, let's talk about what we're playing instead. We talked about sales numbers and sales that didn't go through. Let's talk about what we're actually playing. And as always, there's always an obscure indie game on the list that only Brian has played, which in this
that's
case
true.
is Fate Extella came out.
Fate/Extella.
Okay,
the-
Fate/Extella.
The Umbral Star. I'll do a quick rundown on this one if you haven't heard of it. This is like one of the sort of more expensive, meatier games we've seen launch on Switch without really like, I don't know, like a a big sort of a ton of fanfare behind it. But this is a Japanese game. It's a Muso style game. So if you played Hyrule Warriors, Dynasty Warriors, it's one of those. But it's more based around quirky Japanese girls in half naked clothing. So if that's your jam, hop up on there.
So it's the third installment in a franchise called Fate/Extra by a Japanese visual novelist named Kinoko Nasu.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that this game, which already came out on PS3, Vita, PS4, is making its way to the Switch now. And it's honestly like, it's pretty niche market, but it's really cool that it is on Switch for those that want to play it.
Now that you've described it, I'm very confused that you have not platinumed it.
I know.
Well, I mean,
They don't have that
especially on
Vita.
I will
Japan?
say, I think this signals something that's kind of a seismic shift, which is that obviously the Vita is dead, and a lot of these niche Japanese games need a new home, and they're finding a place on Switch. And I think that's actually like a pretty good, as someone who is into those nerdy niche Japanese games, like I think that's actually a really cool thing to see happening, because I love my Switch.
So I played this one for a while, and I honestly like the fact, I'm not crazy into Muso games. Even the Hyrule Warriors didn't totally grab me, but I think it's perfect for a handheld, which like is probably why I didn't really play it on 3DS, because it didn't work so well there. Yeah. But it's the kind of game that like,
Talking about Hyrule Warriors still?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I got a little confused.
No. It's the kind of game that like you're marathoning some show on TV and you just want to like just beat up a bunch of waves of bad guys without being super invested in a really deep game. That's your chance right there. This one has like some RPG elements to it. So there's story cutscenes and stuff between the levels, unlock costumes. There's like bosses and stuff. It's totally fun. It's totally cool. It's kind of the first of its kind on Switch. So if you're looking for a game like that, check out some videos of it and see if you're into it.
Yeah,
and there's a physical version too.
It's always, I mean, I got to be honest. Like sometimes I'm surprised by games that pop up on the eShop.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, how did I not realize this was coming out today? And like that was one of those games where I just wasn't expecting to. See
just kind of came out of nowhere.
Another game that came in fast, but we had more of a heads up, was Overcooked.
Yeah.
Everyone's played that game, right?
Love that game so much.
Overcooked is so good. Yeah, so it's $20 on the eShop. It can break families apart.
Yeah.
I know this from experience. I played the console version before with my family, with the kids. If you haven't played Overcooked yet, you have to work together to prepare meals. So and you basically have to divvy up the task, where one person cooks the hamburger and moves the pan around, puts the meat on the bun. Somebody else chops the tomato, and then you have to deliver it all. And then the dishes get dirty, so somebody has to wash the dishes. And it just, stuff starts piling up like in a Hell's Kitchen kind of episode, and like you start shouting like, why you dropped the burger on the floor?
It's really fun because there's like, it takes this very simple premise of like, what if you and your friend were cartoon line chefs?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And you start off in this very basic kitchen, and then they start doing weird things like, the kitchen is actually a food truck on a highway, and it gets split in half.
Yeah.
Or there's an earthquake that makes half the level go up. Or there's rats that run through and steal your food. Or it's on a pirate ship, and as it tilts, everything in the restaurant falls off the table.
It goes to the side, and you have to reorganize yourself because you don't have access to the same things anymore.
And so on Switch, obviously you can play it docked or undocked. In handheld mode, when you play it by yourself, this game's not really super fun when you play it alone.
That was my word of caution.
Yeah. So, and it is a handheld game, so you can play it anywhere by yourself. But the cool thing about that is that when you play multiplayer, which you can do up to 4 people on one screen, undocked anywhere,
super cool,
or 2 at a time, using just the Joy-Cons popping off, like the way you play Mario Kart split screen, but you have your own screen. It's really fun because you basically just have this game anywhere you want to go.
Yeah. To me, that's the biggest selling point. Having only played this game in a party environment, being able to have it on my Switch and take it, like just to pop it up in the office, or killing time waiting for a car or something at a bar, like playing a couple of rounds of Overcooked is such a no-brainer.
It's one of those
such a perfect fit for this system.
Exactly. And it's a perfect fit for just having installed and just sitting there. Even if you boot it up once every 6 months, it's just
the way
like a perfect thing.
It feels to me the exact same way that Snipper Clips is.
Yes,
it's like, it's such a perfect opportunity to like bust out your Switch in a casual environment and be like, you guys aren't necessarily huge gamers, but this game will immediately make sense to you, and it's really, really
like, Zach, this is a funeral. We don't want to play Overcooked.
but the brilliant thing about this game is that you can cover for a friend who's not as good or is not experienced. You're like, move over, I'm going to do this.
Yeah,
right? And they can learn by watching you. But my favorite part about that game is just the sense of like everybody starts off and you're like, you do this, I do this, you do this, and then we swap
it falls apart.
and it falls apart,
Yeah.
and it just becomes horrible, and the burger is on fire, and like it's this wonderful game of escalation and just being completely frustrated with the
but
inability of others.
it's a terrible nightmare game for type A people like me.
It's really funny because like to describe like the basic act of like making a burger in that game is like you have to take the meat, you have to chop it. That has its own chopping station. Then you put it out, you put it on the grill. If the grill overheats, it catches on fire and half your kitchen burns down and you have to throw it out.
Didn't they put that on the box? You take the meat and then you chop it. Overcooked.
So then you get the bun, and then all these orders pop up, and you're like, oh, this guy wants lettuce and tomatoes, so you chop those too. You put it on together. You put it over there. You deliver it, and you're like, yeah, great. And then a dirty plate comes back, and you're like, oh crap, I got to clean dishes too. I thought this was just like a cooking game. Yeah. So you have one person now is cleaning the dishes, and the other person's like, I guess I'm doing everything else in the restaurant. So your jobs completely fall apart. Yeah. Specifically on Switch, it's really fun.
I highly recommend it. If you have friends you like to play games with, and you have people coming over all the time, you got to have this one.
I noticed like some minor frame rate issues on Switch when things get really crazy.
Both versions, like both
just undocked. Okay. Yeah, not docked. Yeah. So just keep an eye out for that. I imagine they'll patch
all
it.
DLC in it though.
Yeah, it does.
That's awesome.
It does.
All the DLC packs are.
And the DLC is really hard.
Yeah.
But it's really fun.
Cool.
So yeah,
Very
check
cool.
that one out.
Another game snuck out.
Yeah. Namco Museum just launched. It's $30. It's
Brian, you're playing this one too?
Yeah.
He doesn't sleep.
Brian, playing the games.
That's right.
Really.
I'll run through real quick. So basically, in lieu of Nintendo again having a dedicated virtual console, everyone is eating their lunch, including Neo Geo and Namco. So this game just launched. It's got Pac-Man, Galaga, Dig Dug, Tower of Druaga, Sky Kid, Rolling Thunder, Galaga 88, Splatterhouse, Tank Force, Rolling Thunder 2, Pac-Man Verse, and Brown Betty. Starring Mike so Pac-Man Verse is the only one I didn't get to try yet, but they sent me, so apparently you'll be able to download a multiplayer app for this game on other Switches.
Cool.
And then communicate with each other.
So it's like a cartless.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
Like the way they used to do Mario Kart on
Yeah,
Game
on
Boy
Game Boy.
Advance.
Like download play, but use a code in this case, right?
But if you're really into retro games, this one's really cool because there's a lot of options on Switch. You can basically sort of mess with the pixel ratio, stretch the screen to any dimensions you want, play with a number of different controllers. But yeah, you can play vertically in tape mode. So a lot of old arcade games have this sort of vertical monitor. If you have a way to prop up that screen like a kickstand or something like that, which won't work with the one you have, I don't think. You want to test that?
No, I don't think you can do tate with that. You have to. Oh no,
it doesn't work. Oh, that's not a good noise. So
this case has one built in though.
Yeah. So some cases have a kickstand built in. That
we get it. The case is really cool.
Oh, like the Splatoon case, you mean?
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
But again, you can play multiplayer in a bunch of games. Like something like Rolling Thunder has 2-player co-op. Nobody can do it. You just can't get those switches.
You just
up
gotta hire someone to stand there for you. Okay?
Nothing like a good visual gag on a podcast.
But yeah, you can play multiplayer on the same screen with a couple of different games like Rolling Thunder. It's cool to have like stuff like Pac-Man on here.
And I mean, goes without saying, these are not the NES versions. So you
these
get
are arcade.
Galaga the way that it played in the arcade.
Spoiler alert: Pac-Man Versus is worth $30 alone.
Yes. Yep.
Pac-Man Versus is amazing.
I believe it was free back in the day, but it's appreciated over time.
And I'm old enough to have played these in the arcades when it came out. So Dig Dug was like the one arcade machine in my small town that, like, as a kid in Germany, you were allowed to go into bars. It's a little different here. And this bar in my local town had one Dig Dug machine hanging on the wall. Yeah. And I would play it every time. Every time I'm there. Yeah. I was there in the bar. And
I think they did a fantastic
child.
They did it like a fantastic job with the emulation in this package, and the menus are really clean. Like when you hover over a game, it shows you like the promotional art from the arcade, like sort of marquee stuff, and then it shows you gameplay. And once you jump in, there's different borders, kind of like the Super Game Boy had. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like $30 again, like a little too high for something like this. 20 would have been the perfect sweet spot, but I don't know. I mean, Nintendo would have sold each of these games for $5 a piece. So
I might just do it again.
Yeah. Oh, we can play some Pac-Man Verse.
It never ends, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to hear a little bit from you, actually. You went to Pokemon Go Fest.
Yeah, it went swimmingly. Right? No problems whatsoever.
You went there, you played the game the entire time. Everybody was like cheering.
Yeah, everyone's really happy.
Hugs,
totally positive event.
People in Pikachu costumes crying.
Yeah.
For joy.
Well, they were crying. Yeah.
So what really happened? Where was this thing?
It was in Chicago. So I went to Pokemon Go Fest in Chicago, which was meant to be sort of the 1-year anniversary of Pokemon Go. It was Niantic's sort of official way of like saying, hey, we had a massively successful year. Let's celebrate the community. You could catch a bunch of really rare stuff. They debuted legendary Pokemon. It was, when it worked, which it did work about half of the time, or maybe 25% of the time, it was really cool.
What a disaster.
But disastrously, the servers went down. No one in the park could get connectivity of any kind. It ended up being a near riot, where most of the people there, like, I mean, the CEO of Niantic came out on stage and people started booing. They were just chanting like F you. And then there was like a rally of like fix your game. People were throwing full water bottles at the hosts.
Gee, that's not YouTubers. Good. Don't
it was
do
like,
that.
It
It's
became
like a Blues Brothers scene.
it became like really rough. So eventually they gave full refunds to everybody and $100 of in-game credit. And they gave everybody one free legendary Pokemon.
How did they distribute that?
It just appeared in the game. Like mine finally just appeared yesterday.
You got $100 of in-game credit?
Well, I was there as press, so that's people who bought tickets. Although I should check if I got the credit, but it was anybody who scanned a barcode, basically.
That's crazy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So basically, like the way it worked, because there are so many spoofers in that game that like fool the GPS to make
So many
like,
what?
Spoofers.
Spoofers?
Spoofing.
What the kids are calling
spoofing and goofing.
All right.
It's basically people who from a computer tell their like do a proxy GPS thing and be like, oh yeah, I'm in Chicago, when really they're sitting in whatever, California.
Sure.
To prevent that, they had these QR codes you had to scan on site that were one-time use only, and that checked your GPS and everything. So if you successfully did that, you get all this stuff. But it was a cool, I mean, when it worked, it was a really cool reminder of why that game was a pop culture phenomenon. It was the whole thing of like, someone yells out there's a rare Pokemon and 30 people run to it, and
somebody yells out, let's kill that guy on stage.
Yeah,
30
exactly.
Try to do it.
But I mean, like, really, like it was a cool, family-friendly, wonderful event when it worked, and then it kind of just evolved.
But when it didn't work, it was a perfect reminder of how crummy that game was when it launched.
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
I mean, I think I made it about 3 weeks into Pokemon Go before I was like, okay, I don't want to play this. It barely works.
Yeah.
I mean, when you first told me the story, I first thought, man, would I be that guy if I went to an event that was all about celebrating this thing? Would I be that upset? But I guess, yeah, right? Like if you're shelling out money, you don't know that you're going to get a refund or anything.
Exactly.
You're just like, guys.
They didn't announce that until like 6 hours in.
Did they get up like in front of the whole group of the mob or whatever they're called and say, hey, you get 100 free fake dollars?
Yeah, but like they did that at probably like 2 p.m. and the event started at 9 in the morning and people were lined up since 6 in the morning. So I mean, like they did that. It was also about 95 degrees in the middle of the park.
And they threw their water. I would have held on.
That was
really.
Well, they finished it and then
They
water's empty.
They really they have a bunch of other events happening this summer all around the world, and they have to figure this out. I mean, I think like I wrote a thing that you can read, but I think ultimately what it comes down to is like they're adding all these really cool new features. They're introducing new Pokemon. They're doing all this stuff, and it's built on this very shaky foundation.
How do you not stress test that before you organize an event like this?
Exactly.
I mean, that's what baffles me the most is when you're organizing something to this extent, how do you not make sure you're crossing off all your T's and dotting all your I's and saying, okay, this will work for these people to come and play this game.
I mean, we just talked earlier about how the NES Classic took down Amazon. Sometimes it's just Nintendo fans just get up in there.
I would just caution because sometimes people do sabotage. You know, when you have an event or you have a launch, there are hackers who are trying, denial of service attacks or things like that. Companies usually don't come out and say that's what happened because they don't want to encourage that sort of hacking and show the vulnerability. So we don't know. I mean, I'm assuming they stress tested this stuff, but
maybe. I mean, I guess it's just never enough. I mean, ultimately, like I'm so curious what's going on, like in all the meeting rooms of the Pokemon company, because like Niantic is one thing, like they're the ones in charge of this game, but I bet you the Pokemon company is very upset.
Let's get down to brass tacks.
Yeah.
You think it was Team Rocket?
Oh, hence the water. No. They throw in the water. Yeah.
Is that how you catch a Pokemon CEO?
Yes.
Let's talk about an event that was a little bit more successful, gentlemen. Comic-Con.
Oh boy.
Who went? So did you all go? You didn't go.
I was a Pokemon fan.
Zach and I went. Living it up with the water bottles. And
sweating, getting sunburned.
Brian and I went. Brian got to go to a hands-on event on preview night and play some of the games while I was stress testing our live stage. Brian, you played Odyssey, you played Metroid, you played Mario and Rabbids. Well, what else did you play? Skyrim.
Yeah.
Ooh, let's start with that. So what's it look like seeing Skyrim run on this screen? Like, did you get to see it on the tiny screen?
Like, to be completely honest, it's like pretty surreal.
Yeah.
Like it almost feels like, for a number of reasons, right? First of all, that's like one of the best selling games of all time. It's one of the biggest games of all time. To see it like with the with the sort of Nintendo stuff around it is really fascinating. I never thought we'd get anything like that. It almost feels like someone hacked it on there, which is a running theme with Skyrim. But it's also this kind of testament that, like, this is a different era than any Nintendo era we've had before. So it's really nice. When you get down to it, it's Skyrim, which is like a wonky ass game that's just kind of weird. Coming off of Breath of the Wild, that is a weird game to play because it's just janky. Like, and it's lovably janky, and people adore it for that. But Skyrim to me has always been something that like there are people who play that game seriously for like the lore and everything like that. And there are people that play to like burn rabbits and just like see how far.
Cheese wheels.
Yeah. And so I think for that's going to be a good time. If you play Skyrim more like Minecraft and less like, I don't know, Ocarina of Time, that's me. That's where I'll find fun in it. But it's a huge game and it runs really well. It's got all the DLC in it. I don't think it'll have any of the mods. We'll see how that goes. But
I doubt we'll see any mods. But did you get a feel for whether or not it was the special edition? I'm assuming it's probably just the standard edition, like graphically.
I'm not sure. It looked really good.
Good.
You mean like the HD special stuff that they put out recently? Yeah, I couldn't tell you.
And did you mess with the motion controls at all?
No, Max did, and he said it mostly worked. Like
Max. Now, who is that?
Max Scoville.
Okay.
Here@IGN.
All right.
I can't.
Friend of the show.
Friend of the show.
I mean, I can't see myself playing the motion controls. I had to bite my lip a little bit with all the blasphemy about the that you uttered over Skyrim.
Why?
Obviously, it's an amazing game.
Yeah, but it's also a janky
wonderful.
mess.
I'll give you that. It is because it's such a big world that's populated by characters that kind of react to each other and run scripts. Like anything can happen, including the infamous like horse carts flying into the sky and all that stuff. Obviously, there bugs happen in this world, and like when you play Breath of the Wild, you're amazed at how solid that world is, and how well it works.
Right.
But there's also a ton more going on inside.
I agree.
When you go into a village, like the way the characters walk around and you can kill characters, like everything impacts everything, right? I usually spend hundreds of hours in like the Fallout and Elder Scroll games. Total sucker for them.
You think
I play the story stuff and all the side missions.
You think you'll triple dip on this one?
I think I'm going to play it again.
Me too.
I'm saying that just not knowing where I'm going to find the time, but it's a perfect airplane game too.
Yeah.
And there's still, when I look back, there's still a ton of stuff I haven't done in Skyrim last time when I played it.
Yeah. I got about 10 hours into the special edition when it released last year.
Yeah.
And sort of fell off pretty quick. But the idea that it's portable, the idea that I can play it on a plane or play it like on the bus, like
And with Zelda, I mean, like you've beaten Zelda obviously, and it's like right now I'm doing all the Korok seeds because I'm a crazy person. But it's like I will eventually someday run out of stuff to do with Zelda, and this is sort of my next theoretically infinite. Like I can just pick it up.
Totally. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, but again, a word of caution to people who have never played an Elder Scrolls game. It's when you come off a game like Breath of the Wild, and that's what you're getting at.
Yeah.
You swing the sword and it connects, and it causes this kind of visceral impact, and it feels like you're hitting something. Skyrim is more kind of like, it's almost can't shake its like turn-based roots almost, right? It's like classic RPG where, or when you're playing an MMO, when you strike something, you don't get that instant feedback.
That's sort of tangible.
Witcher kind of walks that line, like it did it better.
That was always Jose's complaint about The Witcher, was that it felt too floaty.
The Elder Scrolls games, it always feels like you're swiping like this, and yes, you're hitting something and you're causing damage, but it's more kind of classic RPG style where you see the damage numbers on, like that, versus the kind of like you feel the impact in the character recoils.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a little weird to people who've never played it and have mostly only played super polished Nintendo games. But there's a lot there, right? Like it's cool, it's coming.
But then after like, and it has all of those games have a horribly long tutorial, kind of like character creation and like first level, like escape the dungeon. Once you get going, you realize how deep the systems are and how much you can do with your character. How much it is a true role-playing game where you can shape your character and what the character's specialties are. You can become more magic user, or you can be the axe wielder or the swordsman, or, use a shield to block. And it just has so many different variations on that playstyle. I just think it's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. You also played Mario again. Any new levels? Anything different?
No, I went back to New Donk, although we had
He's on a first name basis.
We had the sort of the forest area on our live show.
Yeah, so Nintendo brought a Mario demo to us and showed us the woodland area.
Yeah.
Which this is the third or fourth time I've seen Mario demoed. I got to play it at E3. I didn't get to play it at Comic-Con, but I've seen so many demos now, like producing our live shows. Every time I see something that makes me fall in love with that game over again. And every time I see something that completely blows my mind. And in this particular instance, you know, we've seen bits and pieces of the woodland level, but the one thing that we didn't know was that there's this entire subterranean level underneath it. And that was sort of the thing that really interested me about this playthrough, is that in the way that you discovered alternate routes and things in a game like Super Mario World, this game gives you little context clues. Like you'll see 3 coins floating in the distance on this world, and you jump for them, and then you just plummet to this entire different area that you didn't know was down there. And then you're just in this subterranean world, like going around punching bushes and stuff. And
like, when we were demoing it on the live show, the guy did the leap off of the wall. I was like, oh, you died.
Yeah.
And then he just lands in this whole new
surprise.
area.
Yeah.
When I played it, I specifically tried to recreate every single sort of like platforming scenario that I had playing Mario 64. So I did, you know, jumps, double jumps, triple jumps into a dive. The dive's like the one thing I think is missing.
Yeah, I haven't seen anybody do that.
Yeah, because that button is now replaced with like a throw. But like my favorite move to do in those games is like the run in one direction, quick pop back, you know, 180 in the other direction. Yeah,
you do like the in-air cartwheel, You
do that into a wall jump, into a wall jump, into a wall jump, land, triple jump, like all that. I was trying every single one of those moves. They felt so good. Like I ran around New Donk, not even like trying to do anything really, but just trying to like scale areas, just find little secret pockets of the world. Yeah, still awesome.
One of the things that really interested me about this demo, and if you haven't seen the Comic-Con demo, go check it out on our YouTube or something like that. But we were told, hey, the demo ends after this like mini boss fight, but I'm just gonna play around in the world until, you know, like I'm running out of time. And so I threw our demoer a curveball and was like, okay, get to the mini boss fight as fast as you can in like the last 5 minutes of the demo. So for the last 3 or 4 minutes, she's just powering through this level, and just the traversal, she goes through a 3D open area, she goes through like a really vertical wall jump area,
the red kind of like beams, Donkey Kong looking.
She goes through like a side-scrolling like tower area up to the top to like a very Mario 64 looking area, all within the span of 3 or 4 minutes. And I mean, I remember being in the room and watching it happen and just being like, this is incredible. And for a guy who was like admittedly a little lukewarm on the E3 demo, I can't, every time I see this game, I get more and more excited to play it.
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
And that's without the kingdoms we haven't seen yet. I mean, who knows what else is in there?
Yeah, we mostly just keep seeing the same areas. So like, what else is out there?
Yeah, I'm super excited about this game. I can't wait to play it. Want to quickly talk about one thing that I'm not that excited about.
What?
Nintendo's online.
Yeah.
So you know, Splatoon. I love Splatoon.
Yep.
Whether it's Salmon Run or Turf Wars, you know, I'm having a really good time with that game. And I tried out the app, and I really like the Splatoon stats readout. All that stuff is really cool.
That's
and
really great.
I love the concept of expanding this with new games. Like if they go back and add Mario Kart, obviously. I can't see which ones of my friends are online playing this game.
Yeah.
If I go back out to my main Switch menu and go into my friends list, there's a chance I'll be disconnected from matchmaking. You can, like, just the convoluted process of like, do this there, do that there, then go there. You know, it's just not there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys felt, but I've tried this a couple of times. I successfully played with some NVC fans as well. We were chatting on the thing. It's great when you got it all set up, but also Splatoon has that limitation where you can't team up in Turf Wars with your friends. You can be in the same group of 8, but you're not guaranteed that you matched up.
Yeah,
like,
I was
all
playing
these limitations that are weird.
I was playing with you last night. Did you notice?
I didn't know if that was you because your name is Zach.
I know. I got to change that.
There are 100,000 Zacks.
I know. I got to change that. I got to put Zach IGN.
Don't change your name, dude. It's just Splatoon.
But well, if you see me, I actually did change it last night to Zachary_D. So that's how you'll know it's me. But yeah, I was playing with you last night, and that was the first time that I had jumped into a friend's game to play with them. And I mean, I'm at like level 11. I've played over 20 hours of this game, but I just hadn't jumped in with anyone. And I just assumed that I would be on your team since you're on my friends list. I just assumed that they would put us together. And then when you popped up on the other team, I was so bummed because I was like, oh, I wanted to fight with Pear, and also he's probably much better at this game than I am. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think the layout of the app is really awesome. I think that using it for anything but like stats, and so like one of the things I liked from it was there's a little store in there where you can send exclusive items from the app to your character.
I definitely did that.
I bought a leather jacket, which rules. Perry was telling me like it probably has bad stats. I was like, I don't care. I'm just here to look good. And that's great. Like, and it's gonna be really cool when you open up that app and there's a bunch of different games and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the actual using it to like interact with people in a meaningful way is basically broken. And also like when something else pops up on your phone, like a text or something like that, or like, you know, it's not sitting in the foreground, which is like, that's not how phones work. Like they're multi-purpose devices. It all kind of falls away. So
yeah, it's one of those, like the app itself is actually really well designed.
Yeah.
Like the interface is cool. Checking the stats after the fact is cool. I think it's just how cumbersome it is to be using it while playing. Like it's just another thing to look at. It feels like one too many.
And I'm usually the guy who always says, well, you're worried about running out of battery on your phone, just plug it in or put in a power brick. And that exact thing happened to me. My faraway friend in another city up north said, hey, you want to play? And sent me a friend invite. I'm like, awesome, 1%. And I'm like plugging in my headset. I'm like, oh, crap. And then I'm like, oh, I'm not near an outlet. I'm on my couch, right? And then I'm like, all right, let me get a power brick. It's just disruptive. It's another element when honestly, the Pro Controller should have just had a phone port on it. Here's hoping a future iteration of the Nintendo Switch, the Nintendo Switch Pro or whatever comes out, and it fixes this limitation whether by adding more RAM to allow for easy like cross game chat, or a Pro controller comes out that has a headphone jack. Something's got to happen because I don't see this system just flying for the entire time.
And until then, I'm only going to play online multiplayer games with strangers or whoever's online, and I'm not going to use voice chat. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, I've sort of divorced myself from the idea of like playing this.
I'll
in
do
the
voice
same,
chat, but
I'm not going to ever play Splatoon in the same way that I play Overwatch unless I'm in the room with those people. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's a bummer because like especially modes like Salmon Run or even Turf War, when you're playing with 4 people like I have in the office, it's a totally different experience because you're calling out things like, hey, we need backup over here. Enemies are coming from this direction. And like that stuff just doesn't exist in a way that's easily accessible through the app.
Especially other games. I mean, like when you think about this as a disincentive for people to make their multiplayer or to bring their multiplayer games to Switch. I mean, it's when you think of like Rainbow Six Siege or something like that, where like you have to be communicating with your team. Like a game like that would be really hard if you can't always rely on somebody to be using voice chat.
Right.
Yep, I think it's a work in progress, guys. I hope it gets much, much better. For our final topic, I want to switch gears a little bit from the real world to the hypothetical. Actually, we're going to talk about Metroid Prime, a game that we're all very excited about and know zero about. We've seen the Metroid Prime 4 logo revealed at E3.
What a logo it was.
And we asked, hey, who's making this? And the answer was a new team will work on this could mean a team that hasn't been announced yet, a team that hasn't been founded yet or created yet. Maybe it's across different offices. We don't know. So I thought it would be really fun to get together and talk about like, who do you want on this game? Who do you want to make Metroid Prime 4? So maybe we'll start with you.
Okay, so obviously the cop-out answer for me is Retro.
I see. That's an original.
I mean, I have another answer as well, but to me, Metroid Prime is probably in my top 5 favorite games of all time. I think it's one of the most moody and atmospheric and perfectly paced games ever created. So if Retro could go back to those roots and do it and be successful at it, more power to him. That being said, I would love to see a studio like Arcane take a crack at it.
Okay.
I think that I know Dishonored 2 was my game of the year last year. Dishonored 1 when it came out in 2012 was my game of the year that year, and I think they do first-person adventure just as good, if not better, than most other companies. And I love the way that they've integrated a lot of the RPG mechanics and like building your character towards the way that you want to play, and in those games and in the game like Prey, you know. And I think that in the next iteration of Metroid, it can't just be another Metroid Prime game. Like there has to be something different in the way that Zelda had so much character customization and all these RPG elements and stuff. Yeah, and I'd love to see that sort of integration into a Metroid game. And if that's the case, I definitely think that Arcane is the way to do that. You know, you want to upgrade your Ice Beam, or do you want to upgrade? Of of course, now I can't think of any other Metroid powers.
The missile launcher.
The
wiggle wave.
or the spin attack or screw attack,
Spider legs.
Spider ball. Like, I love the idea that you can customize Samus's gear in any way that you want, and that might open alternative paths that weren't available to you.
I didn't even think about Arcane. I mean,
that's an awesome.
Obviously, unlikely to be available to make this game, but
I mean, they're working with Bethesda on Skyrim, so there's
a Switch in the office.
They worked with Infinity Ward on Call of Duty.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we also need to keep in mind that like retro that we remember it is almost entirily different.
That's what I was going to say. Like the core team of Metroid Prime almost entirely is not at Retro. They're at Armature. They're all spread out. So I mean,
Halo, like
they did doesn't mean
Recore,
but it also doesn't mean that there aren't people there who know how to craft a good kind of first-person game or an adventure game, right?
It also might mean
shoehorn them into now they're making 2D, 2.5D side scrollers, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of talented people who work there. It's just they pulled off the Donkey Kong Country kind of. I mean, remember they were not the ones to invent these games, but they pulled them off. They felt like it and they looked like it. I still think they could really.
I look at a company like Rare, who for years were relegated to making like avatars for Xbox Live and mini games and like Kinect sports games, and now they're making Sea of Thieves, which is like a full-fledged 3D Rare game as about as rare as it gets, right?
Yep,
that's what I'm saying. Like no company lives and dies by the departure of a few employees. Obviously, you will get a different take and a different feel, or if you switch the composer, a different sound to it, but.
Yeah, it's interesting to compliment Zach's answer. I kind of too. My first one was going to be Armature because all the original team is there, and because they're kind of a studio for hire anyway. It's like, why not go back to the roots and bring them back? And I think you would get some of the classic feel. I think to the point of Retro, like maybe the top guy left, maybe the project lead left, but maybe his number 2 is still the studio.
Yeah,
So I think like keeping it kind of in the family in either of those ways would be cool. I think thinking way outside the box. Weirdly, the first answer that came to mind for me was Starbreeze, who made Payday. Payday's coming to Switch. If it's not going to be Retro, if it's not going to be Armature folks who were former Retro, I would love to see something weird and different. I don't want them to just make the old Metroid games and try and carbon copy something they're not. And so what I like about Starbreeze is, number one, Payday's obviously a really smart co-op game. Like, who knows if online co-op or something could be part of this. But for me, it's like I look back at like Brothers, Tale of Two Sons. I look back at, even some of the stuff Payday brought to heists and co-op that has now been aped by stuff like Rainbow Six. I just want to see something innovative and weird. And I feel like just a slightly off the wall kind of independent shooter studio feels like it would be a good fit.
Yeah, it's really interesting. What about you?
I have a weird choice. Mine was the Resident Evil 7 team at Capcom. Yeah. Because I think that what they did with that game in terms of sort of mood and presentation in the first person is pretty much unparalleled with sort of survival horror and adventure. It's kind of first person adventure games we've seen in the last few years. That game didn't really have platforming in it per se, but their level design, their world design, their enemies, their bosses all felt very Metroid. There's a lot in there that I think could translate well to that franchise.
And there's precedent of Nintendo teaming with Capcom.
That's what I was going to say. There's also a history of Capcom's reverence for Nintendo franchises. So
that's an interesting point. So I assembled companies that make Metroid-like Metroid-like games, or have made them in the past. And like on the 2D side, you had like Tom Happ, Axiom Verge, Moon Studios, Drinkbox, Guacamelee Chair, Shadow Complex. I love Shadow Complex. It is the most Metroid 2D Metroid.
Yeah, Shadow Complex is great.
That you've ever seen. But I don't think any of these guys are proven in the 3D realm, and we know it's going to be a first-person adventure again, right? Presumably, it's got the name Prime, and so it ties in with that. That means first. It ties in with that franchise. Then I looked at 3D games. You mentioned Retro. I think there's Vigil, if you remember, made the Darksiders games, which were very Zelda, Metroid-ish like setup. They are now Gunfire games. There's potential there.
Hell, that's got gun right in the title.
Because I do think for this game, I do think Nintendo is going to go with a US studio.
I agree.
I don't think they're going to go to Namco as they have with Smash, or Koei Tecmo as they've done with Hyrule Warriors.
And
so then there's Crystal Dynamics, Tomb Raider.
Yeah.
Tomb Raider is very Metroid.
Yeah.
Like everything about the games, like the setup, it would be amazing to see them.
I would love that.
Can you imagine
Can
you imagine a fully 3D but third person Metroid game like that?
Yep.
Like an over the shoulder. Like there's no like outside of precedence, there's no reason that Metroid Prime has to be a first person.
No, I mean at times it is third person, right? In Morph Ball mode it is. There are you mostly during that transition you see her character. The original concept sort of screens for Metroid Prime were a third person adventure game where it was over the shoulder.
I think I agree, and I would actually love to see them try something different like that. I do think the one detail they said in E3 was that it will still be first-person adventure. Well, I think that's literally the only thing they said about it. But I do think, well, no, I mean, I don't even say that to correct you. I just think I think to the point of Prime in the title, like I feel like that is one of the few core tenets they have. I think Metroid games can still reinvent the wheel in a lot of other ways, but kind of to the point of those 2D studios, what I would love to see them do is maybe stick to something internal or start a new internal team to do the actual first person part, but contract a drink box or a yacht club to do design and to actually let the design of the game be handled by people who've proven they can do it, but then let the actual modeling and first person physics and stuff be handled internally.
So my pick is actually, and I'll bring up the other studios. There was Valve, obviously Portal 2 has so many little Metroid elements and super clever puzzles. Ain't gonna happen. Rocksteady with the Arkham series. That's I think the first Arkham game was the closest thing to Metroid Prime, even from flow and visor usage and everything. Right? Ain't gonna happen. Deus Ex Eidos Montreal. It's probably not gonna happen. So I think they're going to assemble a new team, and I do think it'll be America. And I think why not go back to NST? Nintendo Software Technology. They've done Metroid Prime Hunters, so the first-person shooter that I wasn't a fan of. I like the adventure-style games. They've also done Wave Race Blue Storm. So they've shown that they can take a Nintendo franchise from a game from Japan, like the original Wave Race, adapt it, give it better visuals, and do something unique with it. I would love to see them break out from, they've done Mario vs. Donkey Kong, right? They've done, they've ported Super Mario Maker for the 3DS. I'd love to see Nintendo bring in new talent from other studios, bolster NST a little bit, and pull off a Metroid Prime.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
Good point. Be awesome.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Great choices all around.
Well, yeah. Hopefully, I hadn't even thought about your pick. That's a really good one to go back to the roots, man.
Yeah.
That would be big news. But, I mean, who knows? It might just be like, hey, our friends at Grezzo did a great job updating, any of the studios that updated, like Ocarina of Time for the 3DS. Maybe they'll go with someone like that.
Well, we'll look forward to finding out more about Metroid Prime 4 in 2020.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully not. We're almost at the end here, but we do want to check in with our listeners.
Yeah, hi, listeners.
You got a couple of questions for
that's not our thing.
For a question
I'm stealing
segment.
We set up a Twitter account, right, Zach?
That's right. Well, we've always had a Twitter account. It was run by the fans, which has been awesome. But
you took it from them?
You hacked into it?
I didn't take it from them, but I asked for the keys of the kingdom. They willingly gave it to me. So if you're talking to @NVC Podcast on Twitter, you're talking to me.
All right.
But yeah, I have been trying to. I've been trying to put out more Nintendo news, talk a little bit more about the show. So if you're a fan of the show, follow us on Twitter @NVC Podcast. But yeah, we did put out a Twitter question earlier today, 4-question block, and Brian pulled some answers for us, or questions for us.
We'll go through them real quick. Joshua Rogers 42 on Twitter says, everyone talks about all the things Nintendo could learn from Sony and Microsoft, like online gaming, but what could those guys learn from Nintendo?
Be weird. Like, just get weird. Just don't be afraid to just completely break every convention.
Well, judging from games like PlayStation All-Stars, I'd say they learned a lot from Nintendo.
Yeah, really.
No, I mean, look, Nintendo is great at being super weird and saying, what if you used a scale for a video game? Or what if you used motion controls? And, Splatoon owes a lot to classic shooters, but it also it's really its own thing. That paint mechanic in a first-person shooter like that is so different. I totally agree. Like that weird stuff. And then I'd say control and the feel of characters. And I made a snarky tweet about the Crash series, right? When the Crash collection came out.
That tweet was such a perfect tweet, though.
Well, I said that, I'm happy that Crash is back because it reminds me how brilliant the Mario games are.
Yeah.
And that's not because I actually enjoy, the third game, second one got better. The first Crash, I was just really disappointed with it at the time because it was positioned as this Mario killer. And then the controls are so loose. Like when you control Crash, it just doesn't feel right. And the game just says, I don't care. I'm still going to make you jump on these tiny little platforms. And a lot of platformers back in the days were guilty of that. Like this guy loves Crash. Watch.
No, it's not even just that. I think
Mario doesn't do that.
I think it's kind of to Brian's point earlier. I think a lot of these PlayStation games that are getting remastered now and brought forward, you're kind of seeing that lack of Nintendo polish in that I think a lot of these games at the time, you didn't really see those flaws. They didn't feel floaty at the time. Or at least I didn't. I wasn't covering the video game industry at the time. Right. But I mean, like, I think now, I think like another answer to this question maybe even is that Nintendo has this very high standard and they don't, it's why games get delayed a lot. Because they will not put it out until it hits their kind of high bar for polish. And I think if nothing else, maybe that's something that a lot of publishers could learn from Nintendo of like, hey, delay your game. Like, people will leave snarky comments or whatever, but like get it right before you put it out. It's that old Miyamoto quote.
And it's easy. I mean, you look at Nintendo's lineup, they're duds too, right? Like when they farmed out certain games, like, they farmed out the Mario Party series and then Hudson just started phoning it in after a while, right? And their flaws with those titles. But when you go to a core Mario game, I just feel like there's just something the way it feels like when you're jumping with Mario in a 3D space. And even when you go back to the early days, like you play Super Mario World, it just feels right.
Yep. Well, it also makes that transition. It also makes that transition from 2D to 3D. Yeah. Jumping in a 2D Mario game is analogous to the way that you jump and move in a 3D Mario game.
I agree.
So I think it is, for me, it's like the feel and the control. And then Nintendo also, they got worse over the years, but they used to be really good at teaching you how to do things by just showing you. And like they came up with these really clever things where, sometimes when you get an extra life in Mario, there's going to be a hard part now. So better be on your toes. And you play a game like Sonic the Hedgehog. I always thought Sonic should have a speed limit sign. If you go back to the first game, where like you're running really fast and it's awesome, it's really fun, you're going through the pipe and then boom, you run into the spikes and you're dead. And it's like, if that game communicated that there are times when you got to run fast and there are times you got to be careful more efficiently, I would love even the early, like the first Sonic much more than I do. And I dig him.
Well, because the tagline, you got to go fast occasionally, but sometimes less efficiently, doesn't roll off.
But that's why, I think Nintendo is always really good at showing you something and then like, I always love Ocarina of Time's sign that says "Do not cut down signs." Like it's like, oh, you can cut signs.
Well, then you cut them down by accident because you're trying to read them, and there's only one button that does everything in the game.
But the Nintendo games are filled with that. So I think that's something, more companies nowadays are good at it, but Nintendo did it early on really well.
All right, we're going to rapid fire through the next one. Cameron Gillum on Twitter says, if only one Wii U game could be ported over to the Switch, what would you pick? We'll just go with that.
Such a stupid answer, but it's Wind Waker HD.
Yeah. Super Mario 3D World.
Metroid Prime Trilogy.
Tokyo Mirage Session Sharp FE.
All right. And wow, really? And last one. Wow, I'm Michael on Twitter says, what color of Joy-Con do you most want to be released? Pear, you have them all, so you're going to buy it either way.
What colors am I missing? Well, I haven't gotten the green and pink one yet. Let me think about that for a second.
Okay. This is such a nerdy, like 90s answer, but clear. I love the transparent, like see the chips and stuff.
I really want like Game Boy colors or classic NES, like just the classic NES with the red buttons. And
so patterns, I would definitely go back to like the GameCube age and all that to have like the purple with the color.
Yeah, I think we saw those mods, the GameCube ones.
I'm stunned we didn't get that for Splatoon. I thought there would be an ink splatter or something.
Yeah, same.
I'd like a bright orange. That's it. I mean, that seems pretty easy given how bright their other colors are. Yeah. But I really like the idea that like a cool Halloween theme going.
I mean, they're definitely cross busy streets with it.
Yeah.
Right now, they're definitely going for the kind of the popping neon colors, and
I love that.
I got to think we'll get to an age where they'll do like the silver one.
What do you got on there now?
I've got blue. I'm rocking blue and yellow.
See, that's my favorite combination right now. Yeah.
But I think the new Splatoon stuff is going to change that. I think they look really good.
Cool.
I like them matching. I actually like all the colors right now. I like them to be the same both sides.
Well, you can't with the Splatoon ones because there's no reverse pack yet.
Oh, wow.
True.
So that's going to hurt your OCD there.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but I do have the 2 yellows. So
I like the 2 yellows. I like 2 blues or 2 reds too.
Cool.
Very nice.
Yeah. So yeah, NVC Podcast on Twitter. Follow them.
True.
Talk to Zach.
You can ask questions. You can also email us at nvc@ign.com. Obviously, a lot more of you have discovered the NVC Podcast Forums group on Facebook as well. Some really good folks in there talking about Nintendo 24/7 basically. And, you'll see us pop in there as well. We're overdue for an AMA or something. We got really one.
We should totally do that.
And then, we also comment on IGN and on YouTube. So look for us there. that is the show for today. I think we've got it all. We will be back next week with more on your favorite Nintendo games. I hope everybody gets to play some more Switch this weekend. Splatoon. As we're recording this, Salmon Run is finally back.
It's back.
It took off a little time, and that makes us very sad. Where can people find you when they're not listening to the show?
I'm at ZachariasD on Twitter.
Yep, I'm at Agent Bizzle. You can catch me on Beyond, Up at Noon, all the rest of them.
I'm at Garfbep. I'm on Beyond. I'm occasionally on GameScoop, and you can find my report about Pokemon Go Fest on IGN.com.
Awesome. And if you like the show, I'm Per IGN on Twitter and social media. If you like the show, please leave us a nice comment, ask questions, give feedback. If you're listening to this on your smartphone or car stereo, if those still exist, your streaming service, leave us a nice review on iTunes or your favorite podcast service that helps others discover our show. If you love NVC and you haven't checked out our other shows, there are plenty more of them. We've got GameScoop, Beyond, Unlocked. You can check them all out on your favorite podcast service. Fireteam Chat, if you're into Destiny. I hear that's the hot game that's coming out now. Yeah.
There's going to be a whole second one.
I'm a lapsed Destiny player. I'll definitely go back once that's out. But find us everywhere where you can find IGN and enjoy. Have a good week.